Hello and welcome to yet another schedule preview and prediction video for college football 2025. This time we're covering the LSU Tigers. LSU last year, a little bit underwhelming. A lot of people thought maybe LSU was going to take a step forward, maybe make a run at the SEC, possibly a run at the college football playoff. Instead, they lost 4 games in the regular season. And now, two of those were very understandable losses. Texas A&M nearly made the conference championship. Alabama were 1 game away from the playoff. But there's 2 losses on last year that are completely inexcusable. USC barely made a bowl game last year. Florida went 8-5, and they were terrible against top quality SEC teams, but yet somehow managed to beat LSU. If you're LSU, you first of all you gotta cut down on those inexcusable losses. This has to be the year for Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly has been there since 2022, showed a lot of promise in 2022, even managed to make the conference championship game in 2022. But he always seems to have these inexcusable losses. 2022, it was on the road at Texas A&M. 2023, he lost a game where LSU scored 49 points. If you lose a game where your team scores 49 points, that is not good. And then, of course, last year you had the 2 inexcusable losses, USC and Florida. LSU is in a prime position this year. You've got Garrett Nussmeier returning as quarterback. You've got another quality recruiting class. You had the #1 transfer portal class. This has to be the year for Brian Kelly to at least make the playoffs. And if Brian Kelly and LSU do not make the playoffs this year, it could seriously be time for LSU to consider moving on. This SEC is going to be wide open this year. You got Texas, you got Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina. LSU needs to step up. Because if LSU doesn't step up, they're going to be lost in the shuffle. In college football, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. And unfortunately, it feels like LSU is in the same position that they were when Brian Kelly got to Baton Rouge. They've made it to the SEC title before. The last 3 coaches at LSU, Nick Saban, Les Miles, and Ed Orgeron, all won titles at LSU. But Brian Kelly at LSU has yet to even make a college football playoff. And his team has had the talent to make the playoff. But yet, it keeps bungling away somehow. You're in your 4th year. You have to make the playoffs if you're Brian Kelly. And if he doesn't, it might be time for LSU to move on. Brian Kelly's a decent coach, but he hasn't been a game breaker. 10 years at Notre Dame, and all he had to show for it was 1 national title appearance. LSU has a lot more passion for football and more stringent standards than Notre Dame has had. So if you're Brian Kelly, you have to lead LSU to the playoffs, or I think you're gone after this year. So that's enough about the rant there about whether or not I think Brian Kelly could be gone after this year. LSU fans probably agree with me that if Brian Kelly doesn't lead LSU to the playoffs this year, he's probably gone. Let's go on with the 2025 LSU football schedule. You start off your season on the road. You will be going to Clemson. Now, I think LSU is a better team overall than Clemson. I also think Garrett Nussmeier this year is going to be better than Cade Klubnik. The problem here is LSU and how they've been recently in Week 1 games. Every year there seems like there's some loss in some weird screwy way for LSU when facing a Power 4 opponent in Week 1. LSU hasn't beaten a Power 4 opponent in Week 1 since 2018. They faced a Group of 5 opponent in 2019. They lost to Mississippi State in 2020. Lost to UCLA in 2021. lost to Florida State in 2022 as well as 2023, and then lost to USC last year. Until LSU finally beats a Power 4 team in Week 1, I will not pick LSU to win a Power 4 game in Week 1. So give me Clemson to beat LSU in Week 1. Good thing for LSU, you come back and play 3 consecutive opponents that would probably be considered inferior. You play Louisiana Tech in Week 2. I think you should easily run through them. After that, you open up your conference schedule against Florida. And last year you lost to Florida, but that was on the road where you've historically struggled against Florida. This year they're coming to you where Florida has historically struggled. And so I think you fare a lot better against Florida this year. I think you win. Then you face Southeastern Louisiana, an FCS school. Should run right through them to start the season 3-1. And then you're at Ole Miss, and you've struggled on the road in recent years against Ole Miss, but Ole Miss is also losing a lot of talent this year. And so I think they're going to take a step back this year. I actually think you win this one. I don't think Ole Miss is going to contend for either the SEC championship or the playoff this year, given all the talent they've lost. And so I'm going to take a chance and say LSU wins this one. That takes you to your first bye week. Through the first 5 weeks of the season, you're 4-1, with your lone loss being to Clemson. Then the difficulty levels kind of starts to ramp up a bit. Because right after your bye week, you're at home, but you're playing South Carolina, who, if you watched my Carolina season prediction video that I did with Carolina Jackpot, you know that I think by this point, South Carolina is undefeated. They'll be coming into your stadium. Last year's game was probably the most controversial game of the year because you came back from multi-points, but then threw an interception that was run back. But that interception got called back because of a block against Nussmeier that for some reason was called roughing the passer. Now, I'm not making excuses for South Carolina. South Carolina should have never let LSU come back from a 17-point deficit. But at the same time, it didn't help. However, this year, instead of having to travel to South Carolina, you're playing them at your home stadium. So I think you win. Then you go on the road to Vanderbilt. And I know Alabama did go on the road last year and lose to Vanderbilt. But overall, I don't really expect a lot from Vanderbilt this year. I think LSU should run through them. And then after Vanderbilt, you're back home and you play Texas A&M in a series that in recent years, no matter how good or bad LSU is or how good or bad Texas A&M is, you can always count on the home team to win this game. Because the last time the road team won this series was all the way back in 2016, and ever since then, the road team has won it. And since LSU is the home team I'm sorry, did I say the road team has won it? I meant the home team has won it. And since LSU's the home team, I think LSU wins this one. And that takes you to your second bye week. So through your 2 bye weeks, I think you only have 1 loss by that point, but the lone loss being in week 1 against Clemson, with major victories coming against South Carolina and Texas A&M. However, after the bye week is probably your toughest game of the year, because after the bye week, you are going to Tuscaloosa to play Alabama. Now, Alabama last year in Baton Rouge completely walloped LSU. Much of that had to do with Jalen Milroe, who is departing. However, Ty Simpson, who we assume is going to be the starting quarterback for Alabama, he fits Kalen DeBoer's system and the kind of offense Kalen DeBoer wants to run a lot more than what Jalen Milroe did. Also, Alabama's receiving core might be the best in the SEC. Now, Alabama does have its flaws it needs to fix, particularly on the O-line. This is going to be power on power, strength on strength here. Whoever wins this game is in prime position by that point to make the playoffs. The loser will probably have to win every game by that game out. Chances are the winner will probably have to win every game too, but they'll be in bigger position. Big question here: can Brian Kelly win a major SEC game on the road, which he has failed to do so far in his time at LSU? This game is in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I think Alabama wins the game. If you saw my Alabama one, you knew who I was going to pick there. I think Alabama wins this one. It's a reliable home environment for Alabama, and the team is just stacked with a lot of talent. I think the team's going to make a bigger run in Kalen DeBoer's second year, and so I think LSU takes their second loss of the year on November 8th in Tuscaloosa against Alabama. Good thing is you have 2 consecutive home games afterwards, one of them being against Arkansas. Don't have a lot of hopes for Arkansas. I think Sam Pittman's going to be fired after the year's over, and I think you beat Arkansas. Western Kentucky, group of 5 opponent, I think you run through them easily. And your last game of the year is at Oklahoma. Now, I flip-flopped a lot on, do I think Oklahoma's going to win this one, or do I think LSU's going to win this one? On one hand, is Oklahoma one of the best in the SEC? No. In fact, there's a chance they could end up with a losing record in the SEC this year. On the other hand, though, LSU, for some reason, seems to have an inexcusable loss on the road every year. 2022 was in the last week of the season against Texas A&M, who by that point was eliminated from bowl contention. 2023 was that aforementioned one against Ole Miss. That Ole Miss was good that year, but there was still no reason LSU should have scored 49 points and still lost the game. And then, of course, last year was Florida on the road that knocked LSU out of the SEC title picture. Can we trust LSU to win this one, but at the same time, can we trust Oklahoma to win this one? It's a battle of who do you trust less to win this game somehow. And I think in this point, with the players at LSU, the talent advantage is going to show more, and that's why I think LSU wins this game. So I have LSU in 2025 going 10-2, their losses being in the week 1 to Clemson, and then on the road against Alabama. Should this be enough to get LSU into the playoffs? I think it will. Could it be enough to get LSU in the SEC title game? Because remember, I have LSU going 10-2, but they're 7-1 in the SEC if they go as I'm predicting it, because Clemson's outside the conference. So if your schedule goes, so if you go like this, your only SEC loss is going to be against Alabama, which would then create a 3-way tie. If you saw my other predictions, it would create a 3-way tie in the SEC of 3 teams that are 7-1: Georgia, Texas, and LSU. Now, there is a very weird system of tiebreakers in the SEC where number 1 is head-to-head, where the number 1 tiebreaker is head-to-head. Texas would then advance over Georgia because I would have Texas beating Georgia, but then you'd have a fight about whether or not to put a Georgia or LSU in there. But then LSU, in one case, would even hold a tiebreaker over Texas, so then how do you decide that? But I think it would be enough at least to put LSU in discussion for the SEC championship game, depending on what else happens in the SEC. I think LSU makes the playoffs in 2023. I think there's probably going to be 4 or 5 SEC teams in the college football playoffs, because I think the Big Ten probably loses a team from the playoffs this year. The ACC probably doesn't get more than 1 in. The Big 12 probably doesn't get more than 1 in. The Group of 5 definitely doesn't get more than 1 in. And I'm not sure if Notre Dame would get in. But even if Notre Dame did, that would leave 2 extra spots that were not there previously. So I think it's a very good possibility we see 4 or even 5 SEC teams in the playoff this year. That's what I'm going to try to answer probably the Saturday of week 0 when I do who I think would make the playoffs. But anyway, that's a different video. Thanks for tuning in. I'm only going to do 2 more season preview and prediction videos before the season starts. Because we have this... I'm filming this on a Monday, by the way. We have this coming weekend, then the next weekend, then the next weekend is week 0, and then the weekend after that is when the season fully starts. So we only have 2 weeks. We essentially only have 2 weeks before college football starts, and in 3 weeks before it goes into full swing. So there's not a lot more time left to do season preview and prediction videos. And now I'm going to be working a Monday through Friday job starting tomorrow. So I'm only going to do videos on the weekends, full length videos, and I'll still be doing shorts and probably a lot of prediction shorts throughout the year. But in terms of full length prediction videos, I only am doing 2 more. Then the weekend of week 0, I'll probably do a video of who wins each power conference and my preseason picks of who's going to make the playoffs. Then we're going to focus mainly on what's happening in the season as it's happening. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the notifications. The next one, the penultimate one, that season preview and prediction video that I'm going to do will be this coming Saturday. I'm going to focus on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Till then, this is Roll Tide 99. I'm out of here. I'll see ya.